I'm going to freestyle a short video about sanctums, which are sacred spaces. And what is it that makes a space sacred, right? Uh, Typically, apart from having like a meaningful location in the first place, and sometimes you find monasteries in the mountains or in the forest, some inaccessible place where you have to pilgrimage to get there, or whatever, some historical reason why some place is sacred. There might be a tree that was meaningful, and then they have a idol or something there. Whatever signifies that space as sacred. So I do think it's usually the site of like rituals, or maybe some historical event that was meaningful. Sometimes it's the founder of the city shows up, and that's where they landed. Or like, there's just something about that space that's designated as meaningful and sacred. And then they might have an altar. They might have they conduct rituals there. And now I'm reminded that there was this trend on Tumblr years ago where people would make altars to like celebrities, and it was seldom like famous, like popular pop star or something. It was usually like some like George from Seinfeld, or like just some random guy in a TV show or something, or some like not super I mean, it's mainstream but not conventionally attractive or conventionally famous. Like there was this thing where a bunch of kids would make little altars in like the school toilets, bathrooms, and they'd put candles and pictures and offerings. And think also about when there's like some tragedy, like I think when Robin Williams passed away, right? There's a mural of him in New York. There must be many murals, but like people lay their flowers at the murals. Like, so the mural becomes designated as a kind of improvised altar, or in LA there's the Hollywood Walk of Fame, and like when a celebrity dies and they have fans want to memorialize them or like honor them, they put the flowers and the notes and everything at the start. Okay, so we have some idea of like how people make offerings, they might go and sit there, they might sing songs, they might just enact a ceremony of just devotion, right? Like, it's just demonstrating your attention, your care, your presence itself is proof that you care, right? And that's part of the thing, like with going to a place of worship every week or something. Like, what you're doing is you're kind of paying with your time. And now I'm reminded, I went to the library on a weekend with my son. He's like 1, but I happened to be in the mall. The library is in the mall, and we were there early. And the half an hour or so before the library opened was so interesting to me for people watching, because you see all the other people who also decided to spend their weekend morning at the library. And you just know that everyone else there has had some kind of the same shared experience. They must have grown, like the parents of the kids, they must have grown up going to libraries, and they want to make libraries a part of their children's childhood, right? And there's something about that where you just look at each other and you have that shared understanding, like, oh yeah, we are the morning library people. And I'm sure this is also true of like people who hit the gym really early in the morning. Like, they know by looking at each other that they're not the same as everyone else. Or people who go for runs early in the morning. If you meet someone up a mountain, you don't even have to speak, right? You just see each other and you know that you are both mountaineers, and there's that shared understanding. And I also think more broadly, getting good at anything, so even like music, even sports, whatever, when you get to a high level of performance at something, you now actually have like a secret handshake with anybody else who's done well at something that makes them deviant from the norm, right? So all deviants share a fraternal bond. That's one of my talking points. But I wanted to talk about sanctums. Okay, so a sanctum is a sacred space. It's a private space. It's where you can be yourself. It's where, well, when I say be yourself, I don't just mean, so I mean, you can say that your bedroom is a kind of sanctum relative to public space, right? But when I'm saying sanctums in the sense of religious spaces, be yourself, not necessarily meaning let your hair down and you know, goof off or whatever, right? It's more of a there's a sense of communion, right? Like trying to connect with the divine. And I have a fairly agnostic approach to this. I don't think it needs to be any. I'm a kind of non-denominational sense of sacred. I do have a non-denominational sense of sacred that's very, I guess it's kind of Hindu in my experience, because that's how I was raised. But I would say for me, libraries and books and media, like I do have a sense of reverence for that. And I think, I've never actually been to a Comic Con, but I do think that you can sense in the nerd communities there is something of that. And it might be that it is probably informed by whatever religious practices they inherited from their families, or there's like a simulacrum thing going on, like where if you've ever seen like a Star Wars wedding or a funeral, and or just how people honor other people, right? I love watching how the WWE pro wrestling, they've evolved their ceremonies and rituals. So like they have the bell that they ring at the ding 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 at the start of a match. I think now they've been doing this thing where if a wrestler passes away, they have like a 10 bell ring salute. So they ring the same bell, like ding, ding. I don't know how long the interval is, but like they ring it for 10 times as a way of doing their remembrance. And I think it's so cool that they use the everyday elements of their craft to do the practice, right? Like, so it's not just a moment of silence. They ring the bell, and in that moment, right, they're consecrating the bell. You see what I mean? The bell that they use, that every other wrestler is using for every match. Every time the match starts, ding ding ding, the match starts, right? And now when they are contemplating someone who had been in their shoes, right, who was a wrestler before them, who has passed on, then they are participating in this tradition of entertaining the masses or whatever, doing drama. I do think that pro wrestling is like the most I don't want to say pure, but like there is an unbroken thread from what pro wrestling is today to what like theater was in Roman times and Shakespeare's times, right? It's very real, very grounded with audience reactions and responses. It's not like some plays and some music performances have gotten kind of like snooty and pretentious and upper class or whatever, but wrestling is still very universal and accessible to everybody. And I know that I'm not like super embedded in wrestling fandom, but I've always been interested in it, and it's just cool. I think I might do a bunch of more writing and investigating about wrestling along multiple dimensions. I think there's a lot to it. I wanted to talk about sanctums. Right. So the question someone asked me, let me just look it up actually. The question that I was asked was, pause. I'd like to hear you talk about the idea of inner sanctum and how it relates to the meta structure of your work. Okay, yeah. So I have a lot of writing. I have a lot of, I would say, a fairly decent number of YouTube videos, for example. I have a fuck ton of tweets. So I just have a lot of stuff, right? And I have been trying to figure out what next. What do you do after you have a lot of stuff? Like, where do you go? I think that, so when you have nothing, you want to have something as a creative. Like you haven't written any songs yet. You want to write some songs. You're going to make some albums. You want to make some. I'm using music as an analogy, but yeah, when you have nothing, you want to have some stuff. But what do you do once you have a lot of stuff? So one school of thought is you just keep making more stuff, and I do think that's part of it. And sometimes I regret that I stopped to think, and my thinking didn't seem very productive. And so I was like, I should have been continuing to make more stuff, but I didn't feel like it. So, whatever, it is what it is. But I think once you have a body of work, you can now have a relationship with it. And I think a body of work for me feels very much like a city. Like either it feels like a junkyard or it feels like a city. And how is that to be navigated? So I look for the elements within that city or within that junkyard, right? I look for things that feel meaningful, right? Things that are memorable. And yeah, now I'm thinking about, like, again, so with the WWE, with wrestling, right? There has been decades of entertainment, like all these superstars, all these shows, all these whatever. And what do people, if someone wanted to get into sport or get into wrestling or get into any kind of fandom, right? How do people onboard them, right? How do people welcome them in? They'll say, "Oh, you totally got to watch, Mankind versus The Undertaker at Hell in a Cell, 1997, 1999, whatever. There was a legendary match, right? If you want to get into football, like, oh, Maradona's hand of God in the World Cup, whatever year that was, and yeah, Manchester United winning the treble, and like there are all these moments in time that are stories, right? And that it's basically mythology, right? It's history, but like it's storytelling, and it's what does this mean to people? And yeah, if you have a large library, right? People want to know what are the most important books. Important? I don't know. Here I'm starting to kind of feel it out and figure it out. Like, what are the stories of this library? And now I'm thinking of the time I went to the New York Public Library when I went to New York, and I wish I could have spent more time in it, I guess. But you walk around, you just feel the vibe, and you see the names. You're like, oh, who was here before me? I think that's a useful question to ask. What was done here? What happened here? Why does this place exist? What do you expect to be done here? And libraries, spaces, books, people, institutions. Yeah, so a library is not the books, right? A library is, and it's not necessarily just a library is a living organism with people passing through and conducting scholarship, borrowing books, inhabiting a space. And I think the difficult thing about being a solo author or a solo operator is inhabiting a space by yourself. And if you write like online, it's the digital space does not, fill up around you, right? Like, and now I'm thinking of like artists I have admired, like tattoo artists and any kind of like musicians or whatever. And I love going into a space and it's just full of art and full of trinkets and like meaningful trinkets. And now I'm thinking of when I was in San Francisco. I think I randomly walked into some old bar or something, and just there's photographs everywhere of people in that bar, I think. And you just feel the history. You're like, whoa, this place, that there is a sacredness to that space because you feel the weight of history. You feel that place has been attended to with attention. It has been noted. It has been there's a vibe. You feel oh, like this is important to somebody, even if it's not like globally important or whatever. Like you're in a space that is cared for, right? And that's like advanced coziness in a sense. Yeah, it's like so cozy you feel the divine. And I'm just trying to figure out how to invoke that in my work. And I look at my Word Vomits project, for example, and it's a lot of standalone stuff. And I'm thinking it needs more meta commentary. It needs my, like, there's a bit of time when there's a lot of reacts content on YouTube where someone's reacting to some other video. And then that got a bit absurd. And if you watch Bo Burnham's Netflix special, he does this recursion thing where he reacts to himself reacting, to himself reacting, to himself reacting, and it just kind of goes crazy. That said, if you check out the Talmud, right, as a text, it's very hypertext. It's there's text and there's commentary on the text and there's commentary on the commentary and it's a rebuttal to the commentary on the commentary, and it's like there's layers and layers to it, and that does feel. You feel the weight of the attention, right? You feel that it's been debated and engaged with. And yeah, I think what I want with my projects is, so I'm doing all these rambling YouTube videos, for example, but I haven't spent much time reviewing and revisiting old things. And it's funny because if you go to my Word Vomit blog, there's a whole category of review your stuff. Review your stuff. You should go back and look at your stuff. And I know it intellectually, but I think at some emotional level, maybe at some emotional level, I have some kind of blockage that I should investigate. Maybe. Well, I was busy working on my book, and that's done. And then I was busy raising my child, and that's never gonna be done, right? But like yeah, I think it's time for me to. I don't know. I'm in two minds about this. So at one level, it's like, oh, I gotta return to contemplation, and when I say like the tavern and the temple is for contemplation. There's that, and then there's, oh, you should try and do something different, do something new. Um, and now for some reason I'm thinking about dating, and it's like going. I married the first girl that I dated seriously, and there's this question of, do you see, if you've gone on a date and it went pretty well, do you see the same person again, or do you go on another date and hope that that date might be even better? How do you choose? You can argue about it all day, but ultimately you go with whatever you feel is correct, right? And like if you ask a couple of friends for advice and one of them gives you one piece of advice, another one gives you the other piece of advice, you either reinforce whichever you were already feeling, or maybe you respect one of your friends more and then you want to earn, you want to go with their worldview, and that's a kind of going with a feeling, which you might regret in some other way. Like whatever choice you make, there's always some opportunity for regret, and so that's inescapable. Sanctums, writing. I don't know, man. I don't know where I'm going with this. I guess if I've searched myself, I'm looking as I have like tabs open, my notes, 336 notes in my iOS notes. It's a lot less than it used to be. It used to be like over 1,000, but now it's 300. And I would like that number to be smaller. I always like that number to be smaller, but it isn't necessarily my top priority on any given day. Sometimes I wake up and I have something I really want to write, and I start writing it, and then I get distracted or I get tired, and then that's kind of sitting there unfinished. And maybe I should have a process for treating my unfinished drafts with more dignity, right? Like instead of just leaving them haphazardly all over my workshop, which is my head and my notes apps and stuff. Maybe I should have like a log of some kind where I log them. I'm kind of trying this on a Substack note that I'm editing as I go. But we'll see how it goes. So yeah, I'm just gonna end this here because I don't think I can come to a great conclusion because I'm still figuring it out. But there's something here in all of the things that I've said. There's something about arranging space, consecration, attending to, putting aside things that are not relevant for the matter at hand. Yeah, I'll just end this here. And thanks, Ariella Abello. Thanks, Ariella. Thanks for the question. Much to think about.